This is The Real Gig with Bret Alexander.
Hello everyone, a little something different here today. We're going to do this one in the studio. A lot of these podcasts talking to a lot of musicians and talking about their creative process and how they do what they do. And I think if you're a person that's trying to get into this, or you want to write songs, or these kind of techniques can be used for anything, just general problem solving, decorating your house, anything you want to do that you want to be creative. So I'm just going to kind of throw out a couple ideas that I might use if I'm stuck with songwriting or life, and you can take it from there. Maybe use it in some of your own scenarios. Okay, so a lot of people, you get asked, people that don't write songs kind of get at you get asked, well, how do you write a song? Does the lyrics come first? Does the music come first? How do you get inspiration? And it's sort of a difficult process to talk about, because really a lot of it is just kind of sitting around noodling until something connects with you. But there are sort of actionable steps that you can take as you're working through things, or as you're just trying to kind of get a foothold. You're trying to get a stake in the ground with a direction. What I'll do a lot of times is I'll combine, if I don't have any like real solid idea of what I want to do, or I don't have a really good solid seed of an idea, I'll you can take 2 or 3 known things that you know and combine them. I think this is it's a good exercise and a good process, because like for instance, if you're like an acoustic guitar player and you write with an acoustic guitar, which I do a lot, a lot of just kind of writing with acoustic. So a lot of it's real comfortable to kind of, you know what I mean? You kind of get in that mid-tempo groove and it feels really good. Or, we get people here in the studio sometimes and they all, every song's kind of, and they'll kind of get in the same sort of tempo and groove. And it's sort of, and usually with a singer-songwriter or something, you're looking at a very mid-tempo thing. They love that sort of mid-tempo. So now when you take that out into a club or a bar or somewhere where there's a lot of people that want to have a good time, and you do 3 or 4 of those songs in a row, then it kind of the set gets weighed down. So it's good to have like a variety of tempos and keys and major and minor type of songs, darker songs, lighter songs, fun, anything like that. So maybe that's not your go-to as a creator, as a writer. So I think you find yourself just kind of looking for ideas, and you kind of like what Tom Waits said, your hands are like dogs, they always go to familiar places. You know what I mean? So I think there's certainly that. I mean, certainly everybody has a style and tendencies, and they all have a magic trick that they use in their songwriting or their creation. It could be painting or whatever. So, but it's a good idea to try to get out of that, and an easy way to get out of that is to combine a couple elements of something else that maybe you like, and make something new out of it. And I'm not talking about copying. I'm talking about the framing. I don't know if you've ever seen those Disney, look it up on YouTube, where you have these different Disney movies. You see them side by side, and they're basically the same scene. The same, the Jungle Book and one other, something else, and that's basically the same set of scenes. He jumps over a rock and he goes through a stream, and there's form behind. There's form behind any creative endeavor, and a lot of it is kind of learning what that form is and trying to use it to your advantage. And sometimes you might want to disguise the form, or borrow a form from something else and then combine it with something else and then make something new. And that's just a real easy way to do it if if you're maybe feeling uninspired, that you get up and you went to the usual places and nothing happens. So I'll give you a quick example. Like I made up a tempo. Like if you take a tempo of like Michael Jackson, Billie Jean. Here's the tempo, right? Okay, it's 117. Okay, so then say I want to do. Okay, so I just picked a random tempo. Maybe I would be more likely to write at 90 beats per minute, which is quite a bit slower than that. Maybe that would be my go-to sweet spot. Okay, so I got 117. I got the tempo of a song like Billie Jean, and maybe say I said just Oasis just got together, and you go, all right, Wonderwall, take Wonderwall. So you have, if you take strip that song down to the studs, basically it's just a verse, B section, and chorus. You know what I mean? And so you take like the first line of Wonderwall, today is going to be there, going to be back to you. Somehow, I don't know how exactly what you had to do. So if lines 1 and 2 rhyme, I don't believe that anybody feels the way I do about you now. Okay, the third line doesn't. So, okay, so I'm going to write a verse that the first 2 lines rhyme and the third one doesn't. And it's going to be that sort of form. But then I want it to be a country song. Let's say I want it to be a country song. So I pull up, like just for an example, I'll pull up a groove here and just kind of like a darker kind of. All right, so this is the tempo of Billie Jean, So you could go. I was lost, couldn't find a way to peace of mind, and I was feeling lost and alone. And you came to me, and now I see. Something like that. So basically you're writing, I'm just babbling there, but that'll give you a form, and nobody's going to accuse you of that sounding like Billie Jean or Wonderwall. You've basically used the form of something else to do that. So that's like as from a songwriting standpoint or an art standpoint. Maybe you like, if you're painting something, you like the motion of a famous painting that you want to use, and you use that, but use it in a different context. I'm not a painter, so I'm a musician. The old saying is like artists decorate space and musicians decorate time, and basically that's what we're doing here. We're decorating time, over the period of time with a groove and the tempo, and with a form and with melody, and lyrics, and that's what it is. That's what songwriting is, and I think if you're stuck, or if you're just starting, you try to start, and there's like this sense of like this endless possibility. There's all these possibilities, and it's hard to narrow it down into something that that just seems overwhelming. You're just kind of looking at a blank sheet of paper, and you're looking at all the songs and all the chords and all the things, and how do you distill that down into like an actual song, So the way I describe it is, I think anybody, whether it be a songwriter, an artist, or an entrepreneur or whatever, I think you're more defined by your limitations than you are by your abilities, which is a big thing to me. Your uniqueness comes from your limitations, in my opinion. certainly there are virtuosos out there that seem pretty limitless in their abilities, and I'm not going to discount that. But a lot of the thing that connects with people, that people connect with an artist, they connect with anyone that creates something. A lot of that connection comes from the limitations of the person that's creating the thing, So I think that that's something to be embraced and not hidden. And there's an old adage that that people should look into their childhood and take what they liked the least or what they hated the most about their childhood, and therein lies clues to their purpose in life. You know what I mean? So I think as a creator, as a songwriter or something, you can kind of look to those things that, maybe you liked the least, and therein maybe lies part of your uniqueness as an artist, that where you kind of are connected to something like that you can then spill out into your art, into your songs, or whatever you're creating. You can be decorating your house; it doesn't matter. So on that note of embracing limitations, you could take. Here's an example, and this is self-imposed, which also can be done. And Anthony Hopkins, the actor, said that whenever he does a role, he'll always put some trait into the character that never appears in the movie. So, for instance, he would say, okay, well, this guy hates his brother, but it never appears in the movie that he has a problem with his brother. But every time his brother enters a scene, the character changes in the film. So that adds a depth to him that basically that's not stated. There's something underneath there cooking around that's kind of brewing that's not stated, and that adds depth to the person. Just like, a person walks into the room and you just get a vibe off them. Sometimes it's a good vibe, sometimes it's a bad vibe. But there's something underneath there that's not being shared or told that adds depth to that person. And you can use that, just like a song is a person, or a painting or whatever, it's a person. So to the point of the limitations, also you take a really good example would be as a painter like Monet. Monet had cataracts later in life, and basically the cataracts affected his vision, and he saw like much more muted colors and things out of focus, and which kind of informed his impressionistic style, which would not have surfaced had it not been for that limitation, that affliction. So those are things you can use in your music, art, whatever, to inform your own uniqueness, and to try not to sound too pretentious with that. But anyhow, so so those are the things. Another way to do this, or another way to use this sort of limitation / underlying things that's pulling the strings in it, whatever you're doing, is in problem solving. Like for me, I like to do that with, I read this in a book, and I can't remember which book it was. It might have been The Medici Effect, where you would get people in these think tanks, and they would kind of come up with 20 solutions. Like if you were gonna write a song, or you were gonna create something, you might come up with 20 ideas of what a solution to a problem was, or what a creative thing that you wanted to do, how you could go about it. So what'll happen is, like, the first 7, 8, 9, 10 things you come up with will be basically low-hanging fruit. You'll come up with, you'll come up with the basic ideas that everybody would come up with. I can write a country song. I could write a 1-4-5 song. I could write a blues, or all these things that have been done millions of times, and often poorly. So, but as you went on, you might do things like, so I'm going to combine Slipknot and Michael Jackson, or I'm going to combine a couple of these other elements. I'm going to do a Happy Christmas song in a minor key, and things like that. And then you might come up with something a little more unique and a little more singular that way. The example, which was the problem-solving example that was in the book I read, which I'm not sure what the book was they were looking for there was like a think tank that was looking for a way to get ice off of power lines in remote areas, like Arctic areas, where they'd had all these power lines, and they would get loaded down with ice, and they'd be breaking the power lines, blah blah blah. So they were thinking like, well, we're gonna heat whatever, we're gonna like kind of go up there, and we're gonna heat the lines somehow, or we're gonna put insulation around all the lines, and that's not gonna keep them from freezing. And then they just kind of went down the line with their 20 solutions, trying to figure out what they could do, and none of them were cost effective or practical, or they couldn't be done. So finally, as they got down to solutions 14, 15, 16, whatever, somebody said, well, we'll put honey pots on top of the poles, and then the bears will climb the poles, and they'll shake the poles to get the honey down, and then that'll knock the ice off, right? So that's ridiculous, obviously, but it did set them in a direction that they could. They never thought about using vibration to get the lines cleared, right? So then they thought about that. Then they riffed on that a little bit, and then they came up with the idea of using helicopters. So they could fly the helicopters over the lines, and then the downdraft would be enough to shake the ice off, and they actually do that now. So there's something. Had you not kind of went looking for the ridiculous combination, you would have never thought of the thing that you could use in such a way that would kind of give you a unique solution to something that seems solvable. So so that's kind of the vibe. Another one I would use is, you're talking to kids and they want to get started improvising on the guitar or on an instrument. And I said, well, if you're playing a song, just think of another song and play the rhythm of the song. Think of another song, or think of another melody, and just put that into this song, So for instance, like using my little drum loop. So if I was say if I had like a minor kind of, I wanted to improvise over this, but I didn't know how, right? And I say, okay, well, just think of Happy Birthday. So if you go, like that, like basically you're playing Happy Birthday, and nobody's going to accuse you of playing Happy Birthday if you're playing some dirgy E minor blues, So that's a way of put a different melody in your head, put that out. The same thing as Anthony Hopkins hating his brother, or the bears with honeypots informing the helicopters. Like all these things are just simple sort of actionable steps that you can use to be creative when you don't feel very creative, or you're not used to being creative. and then that that's basically how it happens. And the other one, lastly, I'll say is set a schedule. Set really concrete, outside of you goals. Whether it be, okay, I want to write 2 songs a week, or I'm going to write for 2 hours in the morning every day, and get into a discipline of it. You can combine the perspiration with the inspiration, and you won't have to sit around and wait for it to be handed to you. Okay?
This podcast was produced by Stone State Entertainment.